last year, a movie came out called The Art of Self-Defense. It was like a limited release in theaters. It came out in July, and I think I heard some good, buzz about it from critics and whatever else, and then I just totally forgot about it. But I heard enough good things to think, okay, I'll check it out when I get a chance. And then it just disappeared because it was only in theaters for a limited amount of time and a small amount. So I forgot about it. Well, all of a sudden it popped up recently on Hulu, and I, since we're not going to the theaters for any time soon, I started looking, for certain films that are fairly new or at least something that stands out that I haven't heard anyone else talk about. So I wanted to see this, so I checked out The Art of Self-Defense. If I had to describe what I could compare this movie to, it's a combination of Observe and Report with Seth Rogen and Fight Club. You mesh those two together and you kind of get the idea of the style of The Art of Self-Defense. It is a black comedy. It's definitely a dark comedy where it's about Jesse Eisenberg's character, Casey Davies, who is he's an accountant at this boring, bland place. I mean, everything is just these dull whites and light browns and yellows and oranges, and it looks like almost looks like it's the 70s, even though it's not. It's like when you go into schools that haven't updated anything, and so they just look so out of date. That's pretty much what his environment looks like: his home, his work, and he's got a little Dawson at home, or however you want to pronounce it, Dawson or Dawson. And he's very timid and boring. He has nothing, going on in his life at all. He lives by himself. And one day when he's walking to the store because his dog ran out of dog food, which I don't know how you don't notice this gigantic bag of dog food that is now completely empty. He's like, "Oh, I forgot you're out of food," or whatever. Or he didn't even say I forgot. He goes, "Oh, you're out of food." Like, how the fuck didn't you notice, already when this thing was getting so low? But whatever. It's a plot twist. So he walks to the store, and as he's walking to the store, this motorcycle rides by, and the motorcycle has two people in it. And it goes by, and they stare at him for a second as they go by. Then they come by him again, and they ask him, "Do you have a gun on you?" And he says, "No." And he's like weirded out by it. And then the motorcycle drives off. Then he makes it to the store. He buys the big bag of dog food. He's carrying it home, and he's walking, and all of a sudden you can hear in the background the motorcycle getting closer and closer. And you see him starting to freak out until it gets to a point where he drops the bag and he runs. And of course, someone jumps off the motorcycle and he starts beating the shit out of him. All of a sudden, another motorcycle shows up, and there's like 4 people kicking the shit out of him. And I mean, they look like they almost kill him. Like it ends with like one of them doing almost like a California curve stuff on his face, and then it fades to black, and he wakes up in the hospital. So he's on sick leave from work for his injury, and he's scared. He doesn't want to go out. He doesn't eat. Like, there's a point where like he runs out of dog food again, and he doesn't want to go out to get his dog food because he's too scared to go at night. So the next one of these days, he goes out and he goes to a gun store. And oh god, look, I don't have really any problems with this movie at all. But one problem I did have was I hate it when movies have like their own personal political agenda by the people that make it. And one of the things that happens in this movie is like blatantly obvious to someone like me, okay? Which is he goes into this gun store and he's asking questions. He goes, "I want one that fits in my hand." And the guy goes, "Oh, you mean a handgun, right?" And he shows him a handgun, and he goes, "Yeah, this is perfect," right? And then the guy behind the counter who's selling the guns, he starts saying everything negative about owning a gun to the guy in this casual way. "Oh, you're more likely to commit suicide. And, you're more likely to get shot with your own gun if you're actually held up or whatever." He just goes through this whole spiel, and it just sounded like complete and utter bullshit because the way that he delivered it was not like someone just giving you certain facts. No, it sounded like a guy who never has ever been around guns in his life, and now he's behind the counter at a gun store, and now he's trying to it's like watching Jonah in an episode of Superstore when he was trying to convince people not to buy guns when he was running the gun counter. It was like that. It felt like this weird contradiction that it didn't need to be in the movie at all. That's what I'm trying to get at with it. But it was short, so it's just one of those little things that I noticed that bugged me. Other than that, I can't think of anything else, because what happens is, so he has a waiting period to get his gun, right? So as he's waiting to get the gun, he's walking down the street, and he notices that there's a karate dojo there nearby. And so he goes in and he starts watching it, and he's like intrigued by it. So he decides to join up. And the dojo is run by a guy who calls himself Sensei. It's a white dude. And it's played by an actor named Alessandro Nivola. He's been in a few things, but I can't really describe him. You just look him up, and then you'll know who I'm talking. Okay. And there's one other actor worth noting, and she works at the dojo as well. She's a brown belt, and she's very standoffish towards everyone. She's played by Imogen Poots, or Imogen, however you want to pronounce it. She was the main girl in 28 Weeks Later, and also the love interest in Need for Speed with Aaron Paul. So there you go. So anyway, Jesse Eisenberg, he goes and he does this first class. And the first class is free, right? First time's always free. And he's intrigued by it, and he shows promise. And the sensei's like, I think you're great. You have a lot of potential. Okay. And so Jesse Eisenberg starts going into this. And now it starts doing like observe and report, like with Seth Rogen's character, where he starts getting super obsessed with karate. And, like, because when he was at work and stuff, everyone was just treating him like he's this piece of shit leper who no one wants him around. He tries to join in any conversation in the lunchroom or anything. People just shun him and go, get the fuck out of here, or whatever, right? And so he's finally starting to learn to stand up for himself. So finally, after a couple months, he has to go back to work. And now that he's advanced to being a yellow belt, he takes this huge amount of pride in it and all this stuff. And he stands up to these guys at his work, and he just ends up just taking over the whole lunchroom with these guys in there. And he throat punches his boss, just because his boss wasn't being disrespectful to him at all. He just thought that because he's taking this so seriously that there's certain ways he's supposed to act now in public if he thinks he's being intimidated by anybody for any reason. And he just goes too extreme with it, just like how Seth Rogen did in Observe and Report, how he started taking like relationships with women super seriously, or his job too seriously. And so this movie is like funny. It's dark comedy funny. There's goofy things that happen. I was surprised a few times by some of the things that happen, because there's a couple violent scenes. I mean, really violent scenes in it, but also hilarious. There's at least 10 times where I laughed out loud in the movie while it was playing. And, in an hour and hour and 40 minutes long with the credits, that's pretty good to have that many laugh out loud laughs, besides the fact that I was giggling through most of it as well. But this movie does take a dark turn, and it is goddamn dark. Not I was a teenage placenta dark, but it definitely gets kind of a little bit close to it. But I will say that if you like dark comedies, stick around, because there is a payoff with it that I think was really good payoff. It's hilarious. It's befitting, and it works with the movie. And because of that, I think this is a movie I definitely want to see again. And it could be one of those movies that becomes one of those cult classics down the road, because it's just so quirky and weird and offbeat and all these things going for it that you don't see very often with movies. That movies don't have like the courage to do certain things that this movie does. Most mainstream movies, they're just like predictable shit, right? And there is one thing though that was kind of predictable with the movie. I don't want to give it away, but how there's a twist that turns out there's something connected to something else about what happened to him. I kind of saw that coming, even though there wasn't any telegraphing with it. I still saw it coming. Maybe I've just seen too many movies or whatever, but it might be bullshit how it played out, but it's up to you. Maybe when you see it, anybody sees it, they'll see it different. So anyway, The Art of Self-Defense is, for me, worth seeing. If you like dark comedies like In Bruges, Fight Club, Observe and Report, and things on those similar wavelines, absolutely check this movie out. It's on Hulu right now. I don't know what else it's on, but that's what I watched it on.